And even if you put Brooklyn.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this virtual program today. It's the best weekend of the year, Open House New York weekend. And I'm here. My name is Cindy Vandenbosch. I'm here from Turnstile Tours, and I'm your host today. We also have Doug Chapman, who's behind the scenes and in the chat. We're going to be going live out to the Brooklyn Army Terminal with our colleague, Andrew Gustafson, Amanda Adler-Brennan, and we're going to be learning about the history of the Brooklyn Army Terminal, as well as how it's used today. We'll have the chance to visit Adaptability, which creates and makes adaptive bicycles for people with disabilities. So we'll get to see their studio and learn about their work. And we'll also be going live to an artist at Biobat Art Space. So we're so excited to have you all here today. Just a few housekeeping things before we go live to the Brooklyn Army Terminal. First, if you would like to use the closed captions, just click the CC the CC button at the bottom of your screen. So click CC if you'd like to read along and read the automated closed captioning. Again, I'd like to emphasize, even though this is a webinar format, we are tour guides and we love questions and we love making experiences interactive. So please, by all means, if you're tuning in via Zoom, please put in your questions. And also, if you have questions on YouTube, we'll monitor those. And as we go along, we'll sprinkle them into the program. Just for those of you that may not be familiar with Turnstile Tours, we've been doing tours of the Brooklyn Army Terminal, as well as other sites around the city. We're almost 10 years old as a company. We are a social enterprise that works in partnership with different nonprofit organizations. And our programs really focus on how the city works. And so we're excited to take you behind the scenes at this special place, the Brooklyn Army Terminal today. We also have some other upcoming programs that I just want to share with you. So at the Brooklyn Army Terminal for Open House New York weekend, you can actually go in person today or tomorrow for a few events that are happening. So Chashama Open Studios has artists whose studios are open that you can visit. And there's also some Biobat Art Space is hosting some special choral performances tomorrow. We're going to learn a little bit more about what they have to offer when we go live to them later on in this program. And then we're also at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. So feel free to come on down, or you can tune in with us for virtual programs live tomorrow on Instagram, and it'll be on the Brooklyn Navy Yard's Instagram. If you go to the Open House New York website, you'll be able to join us for these wonderful live stream interactive experiences. And in terms of just our regular programs, we are continuing to do virtual programs, which we started at the beginning of the pandemic. And we hope you'll join us to explore Staten Island's North Shore on Monday, the 25th. We're going to be looking at Callio's New York, who was an artist that depicted street vendors in the mid-19th century on the 27th. And we have so many programs that you can continue to tune into. We also have in-person tours that we host on a regular basis at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. And on Fridays, we're doing our street vending tours again. So we do that in partnership with the Street Vendor Project. You get to meet street vendors, taste their food, learn about how they're doing and how they're contributing to the city. And last but not least, we have on November 7th and December 5th, a World War II tour of the Brooklyn Navy Yard. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my colleague, Andrew, to the program. So Andrew.
Yeah, hi everybody. Can you hear me okay, Cindy?
Sure. Yeah, we can hear you. It's great.
Yeah, so welcome to the Brooklyn Army Terminal. This will be my fourth tour I've given today. So I gave 3 tours this morning. Normally, the Brooklyn Army Terminal is one of the most popular sites for Open House New York weekend. And you can still come down, like Cindy said, for the gallery at Biobat Art Space and for the Chishama Open Studios. But normally I do the tours open access, and we have at least 1,000 people every weekend that come on guided tours, in addition to thousands more wandering around the Army Terminal. But we limited the capacity this year to make everybody feel safe and comfortable, which is why we're doing this virtual tour. So we're going to give you a little introduction to the history of the Army Terminal. And like Cindy said, what's going on here today. So we're going to start, I'm actually down by the water. So behind me, this is building A. We'll give you kind of a lay of the land of the campus, but you can see over my shoulder here, that's the New York City ferry stop. And in the distance is New York Harbor. So we're in the Sunset Park neighborhood. I'm actually right off of 58th Street here. And so we're going to talk a little bit about when this place was built, why it was built, who built it, what it was used for throughout its history as a military facility, and what it's used for today. So we'll do that for the first 30 minutes or so of the program. Then, as Cindy mentioned, we're going to cut over to adaptability, and then we're going to visit with the artist Tatiana Arocha. So we got a lot of ground to cover. And again, we're really just going to scratch the surface with the story of the Brooklyn Army Terminal. But let's start with when this place was built and why. So this was constructed in 1918 and 1919 to serve as the main American military supply base for forces fighting in Europe during World War I. And maybe we can show some, we can pull up the slideshow, Cindy. We'll just start with the first slides. So here you can see, as it laid out on the waterfront, you can see those 2 large warehouse buildings, which were constructed to be warehouses for military supplies. Now you can see there's just 1 pier that's extending out, but historically there would have been 4 piers that were connected to the 2 main warehouse buildings. The one that's closer to the water is building A, and the one that's a little bit larger and farther away is building B. All right, we'll go to the next one. And an important context of the Brooklyn Army Terminal is that it was really sort of the southernmost of all of the working waterfront facilities in Sunset Park. So, you had working waterfront of piers, warehouses, shipyards that extended all the way from, Greenpoint and Brooklyn all the way down basically to here. This was the southernmost one that when it was built in 1918 and 1919. Now, a lot of those waterfront facilities, industrial facilities, have been turned over to other uses. Many of them are still industrial, but don't have the same working waterfront, which is kind of what the Brooklyn Army Terminal is like. We're on the water, but 100% of everything comes in and out of the factories and warehouses at the Army Terminal by truck. But the New York City Economic Development Corporation has several facilities along the waterfront here, including up the street is the Brooklyn Wholesale Meat Market. There's the Bush Terminal Industrial Park, whose history is connected to the Army Terminal as well. And then you also have the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, which is going to be reactivated as a working waterfront site. And we'll go to the next one. Yeah, so like I said, the connection to the Bush Terminal. So Irving T. Bush, who's pictured here, was really the person who transformed the waterfront in this section of Brooklyn, the first one to really build working piers and warehouses south of Red Hook. And so he envisioned this massive facility that stretched from 29th Street all the way down to 51st Street between 3rd Avenue and the water. And you can see this advertisement from 1911 that says, "Do you realize what the Bush Terminal is? It is a city, an industrial city. The picture below does not show it all because no picture can show it all." So what many people regarded as sort of a folly, this was the backwater of Brooklyn, no one would want to come out there, turned him into one of the richest men in America. And Bush Terminal was extremely successful as the world's first intermodal shipping port. So it was a complex of piers, warehouses, and factories designed to move goods easily between rail and ship and ships and rail. And so that is really how he got connected to the Brooklyn Army Terminal. Because during World War I, when all of a sudden the United States had to move 2 million men across the Atlantic Ocean, New York Harbor really didn't have sufficient facilities for the military to move that army. And so we actually had massive traffic jams throughout the winter of 1917 and 18. Trains had no place to unload. You had trains that were backed up as far west as Pittsburgh, trying to unload in warehouses in New York Harbor. And so Irving T. Bush is basically appointed in early 1918 to fix all these problems. And he says, let's build another Bush Terminal, but just for the Army. And so that's how the idea of the Brooklyn Army Terminal was born. And he hired Cass Gilbert, a famed architect, and I think he's on our next slide, famed architect of the Woolworth Building, the Custom House in Lower Manhattan. He also designed several state houses. He designed the railroad station in my hometown of New Haven, Connecticut. So he's tasked with building a huge industrial building to serve the Army. We can go to the next one. And so this is what it looked like when it was completed. So again, you can see those large piers along the waterfront connected to the two upland warehouse buildings. So it could accommodate more than a dozen large ocean-going ships. These are some of the largest piers in New York Harbor. And it had 17 miles of rail track. We could accommodate more than 1,000 rail cars on the property. So everywhere we go as we walk around, you can, what looks like parking lot that was originally rail yard. So what I'm gonna do now is maybe we can cut to my camera and we're gonna take a walk up towards the complex here. And you can see one of these beautiful sky bridges that connect to the building. So Gilbert designed this complex so that all of the buildings were interconnected, so you could move freight and people between the buildings without getting run over by a freight train. Because where I'm walking right now, this would have been freight train tracks. This actually used to be a truck ramp up until just a couple of years ago, when the New York City Economic Development Corporation decided to push back the fence of the Army Terminal and make more of the campus open to the public. And so we have this beautiful esplanade you can see here. And this easily leads people down to, I'll swing around here, down to the pier you can see, and the ferry terminal. Yeah, and as Cindy mentioned here, you can take the NYC ferry right here, right to the Brooklyn Army Terminal. It's on the Rockaway route and on the South Brooklyn route. We're gonna step inside the warehouse buildings in just a second, but this was one of the other buildings of the complex. Well, two we can see actually. So Gilbert designed this facility to have its own boiler house that provided steam, heat, and electricity for the complex. And then you have this, what was called the administration building. Today we call this the Annex. And when we visit adaptability, we're gonna go inside the Annex. But this was basically the office building of the Army Terminal. Now, it's a pretty big building, but it is tiny fraction of the scale of the entire complex. So this whole complex is made out of reinforced concrete, and it's 4 million square feet in size. Get a view of building A again from the front side. So 4 million square feet, how big is that? Well, One World Trade Center, the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere, is 3.5 million square feet. So it's larger than that. It's only 8 stories tall. Another point of comparison, the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is, we'll hope you'll visit the Brooklyn Navy Yard during Open House New York weekend. But that is about 70 buildings stretched over 300 acres. And if you add up all those buildings together, it's only 5 million square feet. So it's only about 25% larger than this complex, which is essentially 3 buildings. So it was absolutely enormous. And when it was built, it was the largest concrete building in the world. Here we can see another one of the sky bridges that connects building B on the left to building A on the right. And then we have this smaller sky bridge that connects building A over to the Annex building. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe we can go back to the slides, Cindy, as we make our way across First Avenue here. Yeah, we'll go to the next one. All right, so a little bit about the construction. So as I said, it was all reinforced concrete, which allowed them to build the building very, very quickly. This was a relatively new material. The first large concrete industrial building was built in New York City only in 1904. And it was the first project of a company called the Turner Construction Company, which some of you may have heard of. They're one of the largest construction companies in the world. They got their start really with projects in Brooklyn. And by the time they got this contract in 1918, they were already one of the biggest and one of the world leaders in the use of reinforced concrete. And just to show how fast they built this. So this is July 1918. This is about 2 months into the construction. They broke ground in mid-May. So this is building B, which we're looking at right now, on July 27th. And we'll go to the next one, which is just 2 months later. So they basically topped out these buildings by the end of September, fully expected them to be done by the end of 1918. But then, of course, we have the armistice, which ends World War I on November 11th, 1918. And so the building wasn't done. And if we go to the next slide, yeah, so the building wasn't done, but they built all of these, they were basically almost done. But then what happened is when the war ended, most of the workers went on strike because basically the federal government canceled all their overtime when the war ended. So they didn't want to work under these new conditions. And so that really slowed down the completion. So it's not completed until the following September. But even then, finishing it in 16 months was quite impressive. We're looking here at some of the important pieces of railroad infrastructure. And I want to talk about that because I'm actually crossing the railroad tracks here. So we're looking up First Avenue. So we're looking north into Sunset Park, and we'll swing around and look south. There you can see. So this isn't actually an active rail line. So we do still have freight trains that come along this line right here. But the problem is, and it was a problem when they designed the Brooklyn Army Terminal, was that there was no freight rail bridge or tunnel that connected New York City, with the exception of Staten Island, to everything west of the Hudson River. And so what they had to do was figure out a way to get all of those supplies that were coming in from the west, from Chicago or Cincinnati, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, all these things that were coming in. Once they got to those terminals in New Jersey, how did they get here into New York City and into the Brooklyn Army Terminal? Well, the answer is, if we go back to that last slide, they use this. This is called a car float. And so a car float is basically, they took those trains from terminals in New Jersey, they drove them onto barges with railroad tracks on them, and they floated them across the harbor. So we still today have the last working, what's called a transfer bridge, where these trains come on and off the barges. We have the last working one in New York City, down at the south end of the Brooklyn Army Terminal at the 65th Street rail yard. If we go to the next one, I think we have a map. Yeah, so here you can see that dotted line down at the bottom. So that is the connection. If you obviously, people cross the Hudson River all the time on passenger trains, the tunnels that go into Manhattan. But this is the only way to get a freight train across, unless you want to go to Selkirk, New York, just south of Albany. So you got to make about a 300-mile detour. So that was really how a lot of the supplies got into this facility, and they were taken into Building B, which is what we're going to go and take a look at in just a second. But yeah, Cindy, do we have any questions so far? Or comments?
So we have someone who's tuning in here, Joyce from Mechanicsville, and she's just mentioning that she always loves coming in for Open House New York, but wasn't able to make it today. But so far, we don't have any questions. But again, we love questions. There's plenty to share. So feel free to jump in, share your questions, your comments. And also, if people have personal connections to the site, maybe you think that a family member might have worked there at some point in time, we'd love to hear about that and share it out as part of the program today.
Yeah, Oh, and I think people can't see Cindy when she's talking. So yeah, if you could pin Cindy when she's talking, that's great. Okay, so we're going to head inside building B, and we're going to take a look at the atrium. And Doug, if you could give me time checks too, that would be great. Okay, so I'm going to swing back around and we're going to go and see the kind of main attraction of the Army terminal. I'm going to put my mask on to go inside. Okay, so one of the things we're going to talk about is really how this place was used during World War II. So this was designed obviously for World War I, not completed in time. And in the intervening years between World War I and World War II, this was really kind of just a static warehouse space for the Army. In 1940, when they were starting to ramp up, distributing war material like for the Lend-Lease program and things like that, this facility was mostly filled with surplus supplies from World War I. It was really World War II when it reaches sort of its apex of activity. And we have about 25,000 people that are working here during the Second World War. Okay, I'm going to flip around here. Sorry. Okay, so I want folks to just look at these black lines you can see on the ground. And here you can see this large window here. So this was not originally here. This was not the pedestrian entrance. This was actually a large portal for driving freight trains directly into the building. And so this lobby here was built in the 1980s, but you could drive a freight train right in here, right along these tracks, and they would go into the atrium, which we're going to go take a look at right now. So maybe before we step in there, we can take a look at a couple more slides, Cindy, so we can see some of the historical images of what this place looked like during the war. Okay, so here we can see the atrium as it's completed in 1918. And you can see, it's obviously one of the most dramatic spaces in all of New York City. And although it seems totally unique, this was actually a somewhat common design actually for warehouse and manufacturing spaces, especially automobile factories actually use this layout of this large atrium. And what you can see clearly in this photo is those two darker metal structures spanning across the top, which are two 5-ton electric gantry cranes, and then the freight trains down below. So it was exclusively freight trains that came into this space. No passenger trains came through here. So we can go to the next one. Okay, so let me explain how this thing worked. So here we can see in this photograph, this is from 1949, so just after World War II. So basically they would unload those freight trains down in on that central platform. And then they could move those gantry cranes so they could position them over the cargo, lower a cable and pick it up, as you can see in this photo, and then deposit it in these balconies. So these balconies are offset so that every level and every sector of the building can be accessed by that overhead crane. And so that's why you have these strange looking diagonal balconies. It's to accommodate that gantry crane right there. And so freight would be loaded into these warehouses, and then eventually it would have to make its way down onto a ship. So what kind of supplies went through here? So let's pull up the slides again, and we can take a look at what it looked like during World War II. I think we have a few examples of different types of supplies. Actually, we'll skip this one. We'll go forward. Sorry. Yeah. So so supplies and troops would have passed through here. Yeah. Let's look at the map, Cindy. Actually, we'll go back one. Thanks for bearing with us, folks. But you can see here on the map this. So this is the port of Embarkation in 1943. So what is the port of Embarkation? So this was basically the military operation of running the port of New York. And so the military, learning the lessons from World War I, acquired a lot more facilities around the harbor for moving both troops and supplies. And so the Brooklyn Army Terminal was just one of many military facilities that were part of the port of embarkation. So you can see on this map here, you can see the Brooklyn Army Terminal down in Sunset Park. Next to it is the Bush Terminal. But you can also see facilities in Staten Island, Bayonne, New Jersey, Jersey City, and then on the West Side piers as well, up around where the Intrepid Museum is today. So the Brooklyn Army Terminal is significant in that it was the headquarters for the New York Port of Embarkation. It was one of the larger facilities, but it was not the only one. So if you were a soldier being shipped overseas in World War II, and I think we have a picture of them getting on a troop train, we shipped about 3.2 million soldiers from New York Harbor in total. About 20% of them, about 600,000, came through the Brooklyn Army Terminal. And many of them arrived by train. Some of them arrived by ferry, coming from staging areas around the region. Yeah, and so we have so they would get on a train. That train would go right out onto the piers, and then they would board a troop ship that would take them to different fronts around the world. So if you were a soldier in World War II, shipping out from New York, actually you more than likely went out from the North River piers up around 42nd Street, which shipped about 1.8 million soldiers, about 3 times as many as we shipped out from the Brooklyn Army Terminal. We also handled a lot of cargo. If we go back to that image. So you can see all the piers working and loading cargo of all different kinds. Basically anything that didn't perish or explode, we shipped out of here. So we can go next. We can see some of the heavy equipment that we loaded, including tanks and airplanes, but also small arms and other things that soldiers need, like cigarettes, comic books, things like that. And during the war, we actually also had a lot of women that worked here. So a lot of women worked in different jobs, primarily as what were called checkers, so inspecting goods, but they also worked as forklift operators, crane operators. Here you can see one driving around one of the little electric tractors that went around the Army Terminal, taking a group of VIPs, congressmen actually, on a tour around the Army Terminal. Kind of wish we still had some of these going around. Yeah, if we go to the next slide. Yeah, and so I just wanted to illustrate again the scale of operations in World War II in New York. So New York was by far the largest port of embarkation. We loaded almost twice as many troops as the second largest, which was San Francisco. And so, yeah, all of that operation was coordinated out of here at the Army Terminal, but didn't all happen here at the Army Terminal. So we got to give places like Bayonne and Staten Island and Manhattan their due for their contribution to the war effort. And then, of course, after World War II, this was the main reception point for the remains of soldiers coming back from the European theater. Actually, every soldier who died in the European theater and their family requested their body be repatriated to the United States, they came through the Brooklyn Army Terminal. And so for about 4 years, from 1947 to 1951, this building that I'm standing in right here, the entire third level was a mortuary, which was used for processing those remains and sending them to wherever their family requested they be sent. So that was one of the huge operations that were here in the post-war period, and really one of the solemn responsibilities of the Brooklyn Army Terminal. You should mention, probably the most famous visitor to the Brooklyn Army Terminal came in the post-war period as well, 1958, when Elvis was shipped out with the 3rd Armored Division to go to Germany during his Army service. But this was sort of getting towards the end of the Brooklyn Army Terminal's useful life. Containerization really made this huge warehouse completely obsolete. And so in 1966, the federal government announced the closure of this facility, along with they actually closed it in 1966. They announced it 2 years before. But basically, with containerized cargo, a huge warehouse like this with only about 10 or 12 foot ceilings was really obsolete. And so it was closed, and actually this whole operation was moved across the harbor to Bayonne, New Jersey. And so the Military Ocean Terminal Bayonne took the place of the Brooklyn Army Terminal starting in 1966. And you can see it here in the 1980s. The military and it was actually an Army and a Navy base. Is sort of the peninsula on the left there. And on the right is where they're constructing the Global Marine Terminal, which is one of the larger container ports in New York harbor. So containerization really upended the entire New York City waterfront. I know we want to go to Sandra at adaptability, but I just want to kind of bring the story up to the present day. So in 1967, we also get a postal sorting facility that moves into this building. And then in 1975, the federal government moves out completely. And so the Brooklyn Army Terminal is basically shut down and abandoned. The city of New York can't purchase it at that moment because we're in the midst of a financial crisis, but they do buy it in 1981. And shortly thereafter, they begin the renovation of the facility as a industrial park. And so it's hard to tell on the weekends, but every single one of these windows you see in here, behind it is a business. Building B is actually completely occupied. And in total, we have about 100 businesses and about 4,000 people come to work here every day. And so I actually want to go back out here and we'll take a look at our roster of companies. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, either about the history or about what goes on here today. But we're mostly industrial businesses, manufacturers, warehouse distributors. And so this is really one of the largest centers of industrial employment in New York City today.
Andrew, we do have a comment from Marilyn who's watching. She said that she grew up on 10th Avenue and 45th Street and often went to Sunset Park and always heard about the Army Terminal, but never had the chance to visit. So she's just so pleased to have this opportunity. And I think that's something that we really enjoy giving these tours, is sharing this with New Yorkers and the local community, as well as visitors from around the world. We've even had visitors who've worked at the Brooklyn Army Terminal whose oral histories we've recorded.
Yeah, that's right. And like I said, we just scratched the surface today. We have so much material, so much knowledge. We could have done a whole tour, just about prohibition at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. Could have done a whole tour just about the Cold War at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. But you can visit anytime. So all the spaces I've gone in today, these are open to the public 7 days a week. So you want to come and take pictures in the Atrium, you're welcome to go down by the water. We have that beautiful Esplanade. But here we can see a listing of some of the companies here. So again, there's about 100. Many of them are B2B, business to business. So you might not be familiar with what they do or make, but some of them you definitely know, like.
Oop, Andrew, we just lost your audio. Just a second.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Jacques Torres Chocolate, Uncommon Goods, which is runs a wonderful gift catalog. So if you're looking for things for the holidays, definitely check them out. But we have a lot of companies that work in food manufacturing, fashion, advanced manufacturing. We have a couple maker spaces here. So if you want to learn how to make things, work in woodworking, metalworking, check out Makerspace NYC and Spark Workshop. And then, we have a lot of arts organizations as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. Before I see we do have a couple questions here, but before we cut to Sandra and Amanda, is there anything else that I should add or that I forgot to mention, Cindy?
There's so much, right? But let's see what we have, if we have any questions. Oh, we do have a question in the chat here. Where does the freight train go when it leaves Sunset Park?
Yeah, so if it's leaving Sunset Park going north, it only goes as far as 29th Street, which is where the Sims recycling facility is. Longtime participant in Open House New York weekend. If you go the other direction, though, it connects to something called the Bay Ridge Branch, which is part of the Long Island Railroad. So it actually connects to the Long Island Railroad, so they can take freight trains, all the way out to the end of Long Island. There's a whole freight network, and it also can connect up to the Hellgate Bridge and go up into New England as well. So we can connect to anything east of the Hudson River from here at the Army Terminal.
That's right. That's right. Such a great question, because it is an unusual thing to see a train driving along amongst vehicles. Yeah, as I say,
I've been stuck in a traffic jam on First Avenue with a freight train. And I've also seen a freight train derail on First Avenue. So yeah, it's one of the few places where we still have it at street grade in New York City.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you're now going to make your way to a different part of the building.
Yep.
And we'll be coming back to you later on in the program to meet an artist at Biobat Art Space. But for now, I think we're gonna let you go. And We have one connection. David said that his wife worked at the Brooklyn Army Terminal around 1976 for American Express.
Oh yeah. So actually, some of the first tenants to move into the Brooklyn Army Terminal were financial institutions. Many of them used to have printing plants here when they had to print all of their prospectuses and financial reports. So they ran their own printing facilities. And then today, we have some companies that also do, some of their back office services and stuff here.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
So financial industry has been connected to the Army Terminal for a long time.
Yeah, thanks, David, for sharing that. Okay, Andrew, well, we'll see you a little bit later. I'm going to welcome our colleague, Amanda and Sandra to the program. So I'm going to ask you to join us here. There we go. All right, so hi. So we have Amanda behind the camera and Sandra Alfonso from Adaptability, and we're live inside your studio in the Annex building, which we saw with Andrew. I'm going to remove myself from view so that we can see you in full view in your shop. But Sandra, could you tell us a little bit about Adaptability and what you do there?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to share my space with you guys. So in Adaptability, we customize bicycles for children with special needs. And now we are even customizing for adults with disability. We do repairs, all type of repairs too, that help us subsidize, expenses. So we are going to show you a little bit of everything today.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. And I know personally, but we have a mutual friend who had a stroke, and you designed a bicycle so that he could get back out on his bike riding again. And I know you also design a lot of bicycles in collaboration with family members or even with therapists and this sort of thing. Could you talk to us a little bit about that process? Like when someone approaches you and they would like to have an adaptive bicycle, how do you go about doing that, Sandra?
Sure. So at the beginning, when we started, the first 2 years when we started Adaptability, we were using a platform. So it means that we were using somebody else's bicycle, an adaptive bicycle, and we will customize it. Now, believe it or not, thanks to COVID, it gave us some time to create a prototype, and we just got our patent on our adapter, and we are using recycled frames to make our bicycles, and we will show you a little bit later what we do. But we do work with therapists, teachers, family members, doctors, trying to get the best of everybody to make the perfect bicycle for that child. So it means that it will be a customized seat, handlebar, even wheels, because sometimes we need to put a smaller wheel or bigger wheels, and we have to combine both of them just to make it as comfortable so they can enjoy the ride and they can get the therapy that they need.
It's such important work, such great work that you're doing there. Can we have a look around, a little tour? Could you take us on a tour of your space? And audience members, please feel free to, I see we have some questions in the chat. Feel free to add in questions for Sandra if you're curious about the business of adaptive bicycles. So yeah, if we could do a little tour of your space, and I'm going to remove myself from the screen again.
Sure. So we are just getting into our mechanic area. It's just a regular mechanic area, so don't be afraid. It's a little messy because I've been working. But if you can see, we have bicycle stands, just like a regular mechanic area, and we can see boxes full of tools, and that we can just do repairs for any kind of bike. And then we're gonna go a little bit behind the scenes to show you what we do when we create an adaptive bicycle.
So Sandra, just to clarify, do you repair all different kinds of bicycles, or do you focus mostly on adaptive bicycles?
So we do both. We are trying to create a welcome environment for everybody. So we do repair all type of bikes.
And that goes to then support the adaptive bicycles, because typically it's a limited expense, or how does it work if someone needs an adaptive bicycle, or they have a child where they need an adaptive bicycle?
So we have different programs. One of the programs is called Adaptability. And what it is we donate completely free a bicycle to a child. What we do is we start a campaign, we raise money, and then we custom build the bicycle. Another program that we have, people that live in New York can do adaptability for the ride. And what it is that we rent adaptive bicycles completely free, so they can get the experience of what it is to ride an adaptive bicycle. And later on, if they have this space and they want their own adaptive bicycle, we make them one for them.
Oh, that's so neat. Okay, sorry to interrupt your tour.
No, it's okay. And here we're going to show you our first prototypes. So we haven't painted them or have done anything, because we want people to see that they are real bikes. They're not really our bikes. So you can see here, this is a 24-inch bicycle that we used to frame. We kept the fork and everything else on the bicycle so people can see that it's just a real bicycle, and we put our adapter. But when we do our complete bicycle, we only use the frame. Everything else would be replaced. We have in here, this is really the first one that we did. This is a 20-inch. Most of our kids, this is the size that most fit them. We try to make them so they can grow into it. So this is the most size that we use at all times. And now we are creating adult bicycles. So this one is a little bit bigger, but it's the same concept on it. And then we're going to show you one that is our end product, and it's right here. This is what we do. So as you can see, we are using just a regular frame. We put in our adapter. So we adapting our adapter. We put a basket on it, and we just make a seat depending on what they need. So sometimes we have on bars that the parents are the one pushing and steering. In this case, he doesn't need one. So he only needs a little bit of support and stay on the seat until he learns. And he has support on the pedals, as you can see. And this is our final product in one of the bicycles that we do.
And could you speak, I know that you've worked with some of the various businesses, other businesses inside the Brooklyn Army Terminal, trying to source parts or explore new technologies. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that. There's a whole community of businesses that are there, and I'm curious to hear about your interactions with them.
Yeah, if you can see, and if you come back and see our seat, this material that we got here is from Fab Scrap that we got. So they sell pieces of fabrics, and it's like a great place. You find different colors. So it's great when we make a bicycle, we just go there and pick up some colors that match with the bicycle. And other places that we will have been having interaction with is Lee Springs. He's been our client, and he has helped us with some springs that we have needed when we customize our bikes.
That is so neat. So the businesses, just there were people asking, there's Fab Scrap. So Fab Scrap is a nonprofit that recycles fabric from the fashion industry. And so you can even volunteer for them to help sort the fabric so that it can be used by designers, or in this case, for adaptive bicycles. And then this other business, Lee Spring, they've been around now for over 100 years in Brooklyn. And they design and manufacture over 20,000 different kinds of industrial springs. So it's so neat that you've had the opportunity to work with a few of these kinds of businesses.
Yeah, one of my favorites is Granola Lab. We really don't use it in our bikes, but what they make is super good. So we love Granola Labs, yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of many of the food manufacturers. So there's a question here from the audience, Sandra. It's from
Sure.
Pamela. Pamela wants to know what type of specific disabilities do you develop bicycles for? Like, disabilities that people have. Like, who are you developing the bicycles for? And do you train them on how to use them?
Yes, it's very important. Once the bicycle, let me just start with that one first, how we train them. So once the bicycle, it's ready to go. First of all, when we start building the bicycle for the child, we do like various numbers of fittings. So the child comes in the beginning, we do some fitting. Once the bicycle is halfway, we do another fitting. And once the bicycle is done, they come back, we fit it. And then we go out with them on the first ride. And after that, we spend time with the family every time that they go out to be sure that the family knows how to use the bicycle and that the child knows what to do and how to use the bicycle. And after they graduate doing that, we still go every month and check on the family to see the progress, because that's one of the most important things for us, to create data to see how the child is improving, because that's one of the reasons why we are here. We want to prove that cycling can change the life of children and adults with disability. So we wanted to be sure that we have all that data of how much the child is using the bicycle and how much is helping them on getting mobility. And we have worked with kids with autism, cerebral palsy. There are so many chromosomes diseased or missing of chromosomes that we have worked with.
Yeah, I mean,
and much more. Yeah,
I love. I mean, one of the things that is so incredible to me about your story is that you had a bike shop and you realized that there was this need, and you also realized that adaptive bicycles were quite expensive if you wanted to buy them, and you came up with all these really affordable solutions to the challenges that adults and children alike were facing. Now, there was a question about, do you make these bicycles only for children, or do you also make them for adults?
No, at the beginning when we started, we were only concentrated in children, but like our friend Michael, we noticed that it's a need of people that had strokes, heart attacks, and they need mobility. So we have been not only making bicycles, we've been making pedals that has braces on, so people maintain their legs correctly so they can pedal. So we've been doing every little thing that we can to help. But yes, we have decided that to make and help the adult disability community too. Yes.
So Sandra, we are unfortunately going to have to go. We could stay and chat with you all day. It's just so interesting. But I know you also have an initiative where you're going to train people to be bike mechanics, like that teach them some of these skills. Could you tell us about that before we sign off, and also how people can reach you and engage with adaptability and support the work you're doing?
Sure. So we have decided to share our abilities. It has been really, really hard for people to find mechanics. And we know that it's a lot of people without jobs out there. So we decided to share everything that we know. So starting in November, we have a complete curriculum of mechanic classes. And for every class that we sell, and people come to get the class, we will be donating a free class to a veteran or a person with disability completely free. So we are trying to help the community not only to get some skills on how to fix their own bicycles, but they can make a mechanic be their career, because right now every bike shop is looking for a mechanic. So we are just trying to helping the bike stores and helping the community to get jobs. And people can reach us at adaptabilitybike.org. Right there, they can see all the work that we do, and they can come to our space. We are open every day, Monday to Saturday, and they are welcome to come and see what we do.
Thank you so much, Sandra. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. And thanks to the audience for so many great questions. Okay, great. So we're going to thank you. Have a great day. We're
Thank you for
going
having
to
us.
step out of adaptability bikes virtually and step into a space, Biobat Art Space, where Andrew is on the scene with our friend Tatiana Arocha. So
Hey, Cindy, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Okay, great. So I'm going to flip it around. So this is Tatiana, and we're in her show, and she's going to tell us a little bit about this this exhibition that she's been working on. So, all right. So tell us a little bit about Tatiana, who you are, and what is this show that we're standing in?
Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much. Always very
Andrew,
grateful
I'm
for the support
sorry.
that you guys give me.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
So Andrew is using a karaoke microphone and it's echoing.
Oh, I turned the echo up.
So we should just call.
Sorry.
This is
Okay.
like the best microphone.
Hi. So I start again like that. Oh,
Yeah,
that
it was
distorted?
like a.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tatiana Rocha. Thank you so much, Andrew and Cindy and everyone at Turnstile Tours to support me this way. The exhibition that you're gonna get a glimpse of it. It's called Impending Beauty, Belleza Inminente, and it's an exhibition. It's a continuation of an installation that I started, that I made in 2017 for the Wasaic project for the exhibition that they had, where I recreated a tea room from the 1800s, and this tea room was just talking visually, was talking about what was impacting the rainforest and the aggressions and extractive economies that create an impact on the rainforest. But it also hosted tea ceremonies where people could just have conversations and about these issues, and that has been evolving as time has passed. The space has become for me a learning space, and as I evolve more about my work, it becomes my own artwork becomes a way in which I learn more about my country and I connect with my identity.
And could you tell us a little bit about your personal connection to the rainforest?
Yes, sure. So I grew up in Bogota. It's not in the rainforest, it's far, but I had a lot of we used to do a lot of trips to go to all of these areas that at that time were were outside, were remote, and we would camp like close to rainforest and a lot of the different areas in Colombia. And that just kind of that was one of my favorite memories that I have. And when I had my son Joaquin, but when I started kind of coming back to Colombia, I started seeing the impact and what was happening to a lot of these places, and that just kind of gave me the urgency of start talking about it. But also a lot of the work is focused on the impact of the cocaine industry into the environment, and also thinking and trying to transform the coca plant as because it's a sacred plant for indigenous cultures in the Amazon and in Colombia, and it's a medicinal plant. So it's also trying to reflect on how the war, not only this war and the eradication of this plant, not only affects the environment, the natural ecosystems, and creates an impact in deforestation, but it also affects ancestral knowledge and the cultural knowledge that the country has, and the displacement of many of the indigenous and Afro-descendant communities. So this is the different works that touch on those on some of those issues. So if you want, we can. Okay, we'll walk around here. Do you want me to talk a little bit about each piece?
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this piece that's behind you?
Great. So this is one of my favorite pieces. This piece, I did it in 2019 after I had won a grant with the Sustainable Arts Foundation, and that grant was given to artists that were parents, and I traveled with my son Joaquin to the Amazon. I had never been in the Amazon in Colombia, and we both spent time with La Familia Neguedeca. They're the Minane people. And this is called La Chagra de Amoca. La Chagra de Amoca, La Chagra is it's the name for their crop, for the way that they grow their crops. But there's a few important things about what happens in this way of growing, that it's not a monoculture. It's based on diversity, and I just had recently exchange of conversations with Gordy, which are absolutely beautiful. I just did a publication where I have those conversations, and he talks about, for them, they're not like, it's not permitted to do a monoculture because diversity means life. And just that thing, it just like stayed with me very strongly. So they mix what they have in this crops. It's coca, tobacco, ñame. Ñame, it's like sweet potato, and yuca. And I like, one of the things that this piece has is that it combines this idea of fire, like burn, because also one of the traditional ways in which these crops are worked is that there is something called the controlled fires. So they burn small areas of the forest to fertilize the soil and then plant their crops. But once those crops are gone, they rotate, and then that's a way of like not depleting the soil. So there's so many things, because the other part of it in these conversations that I learned about this place is that these places are the places where they teach. These are the places where kids come and learn about their ancestral knowledge, but it also learn about the relationship with the land. And so Gori says a few things that are also incredible. And he says, like, when you're there, mosquito comes and you're annoyed by the mosquitoes, but you're receiving. You're always receiving, good or bad, you're always receiving. And for me, with all this search and trying to learn and trying to like see how I connect with the land, and how stressing the issues that we're having when we think that we're in an urban environment and we're disconnected from these places. That's the search in which I've been trying like to learn from other cultures that have a very positive relationship with the land, with plants, with animals, and don't consider this thing separate from them. And yeah, so that's that.
And we just have a couple minutes left, but I wanted to show people this really stunning tea set and furniture that you painted here. So tell us a little bit about these pieces.
Great. So this is what I was talking about, the place where I host conversations. Initially, it started as me coming and people asking, and I immediately felt that I'm not an expert on the subject. And as I said, the work is something that is to provide, it's become a way of me learning and connecting with my identity and my country. And this tea set, it's what I call, it's a place for knowledge exchange. So I invite people that work in different fields, that have different knowledge about the environment, what's happening. And I invite people to come and have conversations, have tea in a way that it's more intimate and personal. And also the pieces represent sort of animals taking back some kind of control over it. And then the more that I learn, the animals have a connection, and a lot of indigenous people have a clan which is based either in an animal or in a plant, and it's interesting to then find out how these animals can also represent that connection with the indigenous people.
And folks can come and visit tomorrow, right?
Yes.
And when are you going to be here?
I am going to be here from 1 to 5, and then at 1 we're going to be doing as it's a tea gathering where I will be talking. We'll do a tour of the work, and then like while we have some tea. That's with Tea Arts and Culture. It's a like partner organization that I'm partnering with. Yeah, so there's in my Instagram page, there's a link to where I can share the link with everyone. It's limited. It's only like 15 people, but if there's still spaces available and somebody wants to come and experience that, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing. This is so unbelievable, and you really have to see it yourself in person. So everybody should come down here. I know, Cindy, you said we have a couple outstanding questions from the Brooklyn Army Terminal. So we're going to leave Tatiana, but thank you so much. Yeah, this is such an amazing work, and there's so much to see here at the Biobat Art Space. So come and check out the other artists as well. I'm just going to step over here, and we can go over any other questions, Cindy, that we have.
Absolutely. So what Tatiana's art is so beautiful and immersive, and we've just followed her work through the years. It's such a pleasure to have her on today and see her work at the Army Terminal. So we have a few questions. One question is, was the Brooklyn Army Terminal under Fort Hamilton's command?
Good question. So from what I understand, yes and no. At different points in time, sort of it was under Fort Hamilton's command. At other points in time, Fort Hamilton was under its command. So like during World War II, Fort Hamilton was part of the New York port of embarkation. So it would depend because Fort Hamilton also had different uses over time. So yes and no, they were more closely connected at some points rather than at others.
And did the Brooklyn Army Terminal, and I know the answer to this is yes, but you can provide a more detailed explanation. Did the Brooklyn Army Terminal have functions that supported 9/11 and post 9/11 activities?
Sure. So you can actually go and watch one of our virtual programs we did last year with a lot of people who participated in the 9/11 boat lifts, evacuating more than 500,000 people out of Lower Manhattan by water. And a lot of those people wound up at the Brooklyn Army Terminal because this was a functional municipal pier. So it's a 1,400 foot long pier. So you could dock a lot of boats here. So a lot of people who maybe were planning to go home to New Jersey or Connecticut that day wound up down here at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. And they had to, a lot of emergency services are down here to help people. Also during Hurricane Sandy, the emergency services for the city were down here because we're next to the water, but we're also sort of on a hill. So there wasn't significant damage here. So they coordinate a lot of the efforts. And that's actually part of a long history of relief efforts that have been coordinated out of the Brooklyn Army Terminal. Back in 1928, we sent a relief ship with tons and tons of supplies to Puerto Rico after a major hurricane there. In 1957, they coordinated evacuation of refugees from the Hungarian Revolution. You can find on our website, we actually wrote a whole article about the history of the Brooklyn Army Terminal as a place of refuge and relief for people in need.
And there are so many other questions, but we would, I think we're pretty much out of time. Yeah. But if you are interested in a deeper dive on the history of the Brooklyn Army Terminal or the story of the site today, we encourage you to come take a tour with us in person. We'll take you behind the scenes to see some unrestored spaces, learn about and see some of the businesses, and see that amazing atrium space that's just, it feels like you've stepped into Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's just incredible. So we'd love to host you folks. And we're doing, if you're not in New York, but you still want to learn more, we do virtual programs on a regular basis. We have a whole library where we share oral histories and research, and we do ongoing research. So if you know people that had worked at the Brooklyn Army Terminal when it was functioning as the headquarters of the Port of Embarkation, we'd love to speak with them.
And we recently did a program the other day, actually, about the former Navy Armed Guards Center, which was just up the street on 51st Street. So we're also, looking at the broader context of the neighborhood, the industrial and military and maritime history of the Sunset Park waterfront as well.
That's right, Andrew, and it's echoing just a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
So anyway, we hope you all enjoyed our time doing this virtual format, virtual program. We tried to take advantage of this. We want to thank the New York City Economic Development Corporation. One of you asked about the function of the Army terminal today, and there's there's at least 100 businesses that are doing anything from food manufacturing to furniture making to advanced manufacturing, fashion, you name it. So there's so many different kinds of companies and businesses. We had talked about, Andrew mentioned Makerspace, and we also have Spark Workshops. So if you're interested in working with your hands and want to sign up for memberships or take some classes at those two different organizations. They're also based at the Army terminal. Of course, you have Adaptability and Fab Scrap, who we mentioned earlier, where you can get fabric if you need to. So there's so many reasons to connect with the Army terminal. We want to thank you all for coming. Andrew, is there anything you'd like to add before? Oh, so thanking the New York City Economic Development Corporation, but also thank you to Open House New York.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much. This is such a special weekend for all of us. And it was great to be able to reach more people virtually than we could accommodate on the guided tours this weekend. But yeah, thank you all so much to OHNY and all the great volunteers that were here today. But this was really fun. And if anyone's looking for space for your business, there is space available in the Brooklyn Army Terminal, and it's very affordable. So yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you, Cindy. And there's someone moving a giant piece of sheet metal here, but it's pretty loud. But yeah, so thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of Open House New York weekend.